Back in 2016, when the Switch was revealed, many of us were curious about what developers were going to back this console. And after the drought of third-party titles on the Wii U, our expectations were pretty tame, believing that a couple of Ubisoft games such as Just Dance and some indie hits were going to fill in the gaps of waiting that we were used to between first-party games. That's why I was so surprised to a unique build of Skyrim right there at the console's reveal trailer. Thankfully we were wrong, and the support that the Switch has gotten from third parties has been plentiful, with games like The Witcher 3 coming to the console soon. More surprising than Bethesda bringing their 2011's Elder Scrolls hit over to the platform was the arrival of the 2016 reboot of Doom. And thankfully, the Doom support didn't end there, with its follow-up title, Doom Eternal, promised to launch alongside of the other platforms' releases this year on November 22nd. Oh, and it doesn't stop there. As of last week, the original 1993 version of Doom, Doom 2, and Doom 3 were stealth-dropped onto the eShop. And with that, every Doom title minus Doom 64 is now on the Switch. What did we think about the ports? Let's find out as we dive into all three of these titles today. 1993's Doom is a genre-defining classic, and was ported from PC to almost every gaming console out at the time of its release. I think it's safe to say that the consensus amongst fans is that there was no exact perfect port, whether it be the performance, sound, or graphical fidelity of any version of Doom that was on the market in the early to mid-90s. Some coming close, like the Sega 32X version of the game, but even that title just missed the mark, with its sound being criticized as possibly the worst iteration of all the ports. I think that about sums up this re-release of Doom on Switch. A fantastic port, but the music in this game is just a little off, with the tempo being slowed down a bit. It's by far not as offensive as the 32X's soundtrack, but it's noticeable. Although I'm not entirely sure why this decision was made, I imagine it was done to further separate the music in this game from the originals that were clearly inspired by heavy metal bands like Metallica and Black Sabbath. Now that's some demon-killing music. Aside from the sound, this port plays perfect, and it's so satisfying to blast those hell spawns back to where they came from with your arsenal of guns or chainsaw. If those weapons are just doing the job a little too fast for you, then try punching them in the face. If you're playing the Switch version and you have the Joy-Con drift issue, then expect it to spoil your time here, with it seemingly affecting your gameplay here more than I've noticed in most other games. I promise you, I'm not even touching the controller. And turning corners will almost throw you into a complete 360 if your Joy-Cons are acting up as bad as mine. Yep, it's about time for me to get those fixed. I did test this game with my Pro controller and the game played smoothly, so no worries if you have a competent controller. You can't fault the game for hardware issues, but beware of the drift. What else can I say? It's Doom, it's on the Switch, and you can now play it anywhere you want. Oh yeah, dude, I love this song. Oh, sorry. I thought this was Pantera's Single Disc Love, but apparently it's Waiting on Romero to Play from Map 18 and Doom 2. Seriously, how have they gotten away with profiting off these songs for the past 25 years? Anyway, if you like the sound of the original Doom, then there's a lot more here to love. And that goes for gameplay as well. This is as safe as a sequel as you can make, not really innovating the series in any way. There is the addition of the double-barrel shotgun, and man, it's welcomed. See, Doom Guy likes it as well. You know what they say though, if it's not broke, then don't fix it. And there is an explanation as to why it's so similar. You see, the only way you could play Doom when it was originally released was either through shareware or mail order. But Doom 2 was created to put on store shelves so id Software could start raking in some money for all their hard work they'd put into building the Doom engine. Some say Doom 2 is the better game, as developers had more honed their craft by the time of its release, but I say they're both great games, and for $5 a piece, you couldn't go wrong with picking either of these titles up. Up until the release of Doom 3 on Nintendo Switch, I'd never played this title. I was certainly curious about the game, but for whatever reason it eluded me. When Doom 2016 was released, my passion for the franchise was at an all-time high, and Doom 3 crept back into my memory as the one that got away. Now that I've played the first few hours of this third installment in the series, I can see why it wasn't as celebrated as the other titles in the franchise, but for $10, I honestly can't complain, and it's not a bad game. All the demons from the previous game are back. You pack the same arsenal the series is known for, but it's just missing some of what makes Doom Doom. I know Doom 3 was branded as a first-person horror game, which I always thought was weird, as I'd never really thought of Doom as a horror series, despite the fact that you're gunning down legions of demons. I always thought of Doom as more of an action game in a horror setting because of how OP Doom Guy plays. Also, Doom 3 is a reimagining of the 1993 version of Doom, sorta like how Super Castlevania 4 is a reimagining of the original Castlevania. I can never understand why these type of titles are portrayed as sequels when they're backtracking their story. And with Doom 2016 being a reboot for the series, that means out of the 4 titles in the series, only one of them has an original story. Even with Doom being credited as creating the first-person shooter genre, FPSs had continued to progress into completely new experiences. Innovations to the genre like Rare's GoldenEye 007 showed us what meaningful multiplayer can add to FPSs, and with online capabilities, games like Halo would set the course for the genre for years to come. Single-player focused games like Metroid Prime would also evolve the genre, where retro studios would find a great opportunity for environmental storytelling using the first-person view. Doom 3, which does have its strengths in this genre, doesn't really add anything noteworthy to it. As with many games that were released in the new millennium, many developers took advantage of the extra horsepower behind the hardware revision on the market to make in-engine cutscenes complete with voiceover work. These new tools gave developers the ability to tell stories like they had never done before, and it seemed like the future of game design might have been to make games more like Hollywood blockbusters. This of course led to long, drawn-out introductions to games, taking you seemingly forever to actually get to some gameplay. I mean, even Super Mario Sunshine was guilty of this at the time. Doom 3 is no exception. The game spoon-feeds you the story for the first 15 to 20 minutes before you're even shooting at anything. In the first 2 Doom games, you're just dropped right into the action and it's non-stop until the credits roll. In Doom 2016, they did rectify this with a straight-to-the-game opening. Yeah, that's how it's done. The gameplay here is close to what you'd expect to see in a Doom game, but it's been slowed down a bit to seem more like a horror game. Speaking of horror games, this one's not done well. I think part of this is due to this port being based off the BFG edition that was released on the 360 and PS3 back in 2012, where the flashlight you have in this game is accessible to you at all times, even when shooting. From my understanding, the original version of this game would only allow you to pick one or the other, always leaving you to shoot in the dark. Even though I'm not playing this game the way it was originally intended to be played, I can't find myself coming to the conclusion that this game does horror as well as something like Resident Evil. The lighting in this game is almost too dark at times, and the light that the flashlight does give off doesn't illuminate much. I swear, you would have as good of a chance going through some of these areas blindfolded, and with enemies lurking around out of your visibility, you'll find yourself more frustrated than frightened by them. If you want to have an inkling of what's going on around you, I advise going into the setting and turning that brightness up to 100. The heavy metal soundtracks that define Doom are absent in this one, as it wouldn't fit the mood that the developers intended for us to feel. Instead, it's been replaced with ambionic tunes that fill you with dread. I just think when playing Doom, no matter how terrifying the beast is, and the music goes a long way to convey that back to the players in these games. I still plan on finishing this title, and for $10, honestly, it was worth it. If anything, just for this curious piece of history for the Doom franchise. When compared to Capcom's output of retro titles on the system, which sits at $20 or more in some cases, it's a bargain really. Although it may seem like I was being a little hard on it, it's not really a bad game, and for the most part, the Doom formula is still intact here. What Doom 3 was missing, Doom 2016 brought back in droves, and with Eternal just right around the corner, expect to see more of what made that game work so well. Doom 2016 proves that the Doom formula doesn't only work in the modern era, but it excels as a series that has still got a lot to offer to the players. It's fast, it's frantic, it's frenetic, and most importantly, it's so fun. The music's there, the fast-paced action is back, and it has a mix of environmental storytelling and shorter cutscenes that puts you back into the action more quickly. There's some new additions to the Doom formula with some platforming mixed into the gameplay. Well, they did try this in Doom 3, but it wasn't executed very well. As a result of this game being designed with platforming in mind, Doom Guy has never felt so agile to control. We're super excited for Doom Eternal to come to the Nintendo Switch, and we're pretty sure it's going to be as awesome as the 2016 reboot. With its release having parity with the other platforms, that means that we will now have every Doom game that the series has to offer now available on our console handheld hybrid, with the exception of Doom 64, which is rumored to be be releasing soon. Are you playing any of the Doom games currently available on the Switch? And are you as excited as us for Eternal? If so, tell us about it in the comment section below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe. We would really appreciate it. And for more on Doom, and even more on Nintendo, stay tuned to the Weekend Moblin.